Barring a big surprise, Cade Cunningham is going to be the #1 pick in the 2021 NBA draft. But just how good of a prospect is he? This is Floor and Ceiling. Let's break him down. Cade Cunningham had offers from the likes of Duke and Kentucky, but instead committed to the Oklahoma State Cowboys, where his brother was an assistant coach. This decision may have taken some by surprise, but in hindsight, it did nothing to knock Cunningham off his spot as the #1 prospect in his draft class. Cunningham is built like the NBA stars of today and the future. At 6'8", 220 pounds, and with a 7'2" wingspan, Cunningham fits the bill as a ball-handling, shot-making wing that NBA teams now crave more than ever. Cunningham's biggest improvement area in high school was actually probably his biggest strength in college basketball. I am referring to his shooting. Cunningham's shot was the largest question mark surrounding him going into his freshman season with Oklahoma State, but he quickly silenced those concerns. Cunningham reportedly worked tirelessly to improve his shot, and the results were evident. He was a smooth, confident shooter with the Cowboys who had a knack for coming up with huge buckets at important moments. The most impressive part about Cunningham's shot is not that it is going in, but how clean it looks and the number of ways that he can get it off. Despite commanding insane amounts of attention from opposing defenses, Cunningham plays with excellent poise and almost always rises into his shot perfectly on balance. This demonstrates advanced footwork that, when coupled with his ability to pull up off the dribble, is really quite lethal. Stunningly, only 9% of Cunningham's 2-point jumpers were assisted, showing that he is perfectly at home creating his own shot. Cunningham's range extends out to the 3-point line. He is already a pretty advanced scorer whose bevy of moves is difficult to stop. As you can observe, Cunningham is able to go into a step back and shoot, stop on a dime and then shoot, or simply use his size to get a good look over his defender. Cunningham made 40% of his threes at Oklahoma State and created half of those shots himself. Like his work in the mid-range, that means that Cunningham is self-reliant. Now, that is a great sign for anyone who you rely on for a big offensive load, but it is even more enticing when this is a 6'8" guy who has not even turned pro yet. When you mix Cunningham's shot making, shot creation, and ability to produce down the stretch, it is easy to see why he is widely regarded as the upcoming #1 pick. The Oklahoma State star was the definition of a clutch player for the Cowboys. I lost track of how many times he made an important play in the final moments of a game. Watch here against Texas as Cunningham goes behind the back and swishes the 3 in overtime. Or against Baylor as Cunningham brings the ball up and quickly gets into his pull-up 3. An important development to keep track of in the NBA will be Cunningham shooting off the ball, meaning in spot-up or catch-and-shoot situations. Cunningham largely monopolized the ball at Oklahoma State simply because he was by far their best player, but in the NBA, it is possible that he will not immediately go into a lead role. For instance, let's say that the Timberwolves get the #1 pick. That would have Cunningham playing with Anthony Edwards and D'Angelo Russell, both of whom are pretty ball-dominant players. We did not see Cunningham spot up much at Oklahoma State, but the results were largely positive. He was already a 40% 3-point shooter, but I think he should theoretically benefit from not having such a demanding shot profile if this situation takes place. Because if we're being honest, Cunningham took a lot of difficult shots at Oklahoma State. A big reason for this was simply the context surrounding him. Like I said, Cunningham was head and shoulders above his teammates. He had a high usage rate and was the Cowboys' only reliable jump shooter. Outside of Cunningham, only one player made more than 33% of his threes. That was Isaac Likely, who made just 8 threes all season. The figures from the mid-range are similar. Only 3 Oklahoma State players made at least 22-point jumpers. Cunningham was one of them, and his total makes are actually one more than his other 2 teammates combined. As you can see, there was a huge and unhealthy reliance on him to get his team going. That led to high difficulty shots such as these, and to his credit, Cunningham still did well. None of his shot-by-shot figures are outstanding, for example, but we have to understand that the environment he was in did not make that possible. Instead, I choose to focus on how Cunningham got into these shots and all the tough shot making that he exhibited. One part of Cunningham's game that I expect will get more attention in the future is his work down low. At 6'8" and with his skill set, Cunningham has all the makings to be a walking mismatch. He is a better ball handler than most wings, and obviously bigger than all the guards with his skill set. That alone makes him tough to defend. If Cunningham is aggressive close to the basket and either steals in the post or just works hard to get position, that is an easy recipe for success. We saw flashes of this at Oklahoma State, where Cunningham simply demanded the ball and then just bullied his defenders. Either he got an easy deuce right at the rim, or he drew a foul. At times, it was more complex than that. Cunningham showed off a little fadeaway that will do him a world of good at the next level. This is a legit NBA move. Watch here as Cunningham takes the much smaller Davion Mitchell into the post, bumps with him, and then just rises over him without much of an issue. This is a hard shot that you do not want Cunningham going to every time, but it is a great tool to have. His assertiveness down low will be key at the next level in order to not have a one-dimensional offensive game. If Cunningham can keep making these fadeaways or even these types of hook shots or runners, that will open up the rest of his game. After all, we have seen over the last few years how important it is to have this low post game, especially in high pressure situations with the likes of Luka Doncic, Jason Tatum, and Jimmy Butler. That's not to say that Cunningham is not flawed down low though. What we saw here were the good signs, but there have also been flashes of Cunningham's lack of physicality. I will get into this a bit more in a few moments, but Cunningham still has to get better at leveraging his size. Even though he is 6'8" with the skill set of a guard, he can sometimes play like he is 6'3" with the skill set of a guard. Cunningham cannot be afraid to get pushed and bumped down low. This also shows in an area like offensive rebounding, where you would expect him to add more value. Often, this aversion to contact means that the great balance he shows on his pull-up is not there in the post. Defenders can get into him and make him uncomfortable by knocking him off his base. In general, I have no real concerns about Cunningham's feel for the game. My main area of worry is his athleticism. Cunningham is not the top-tier athlete that the likes of Jalen Green, Jalen Suggs, or Keon Johnson might be. He is great in some areas, such as balance, coordination, and deceleration, but in terms of what we usually think as of athleticism, he is only solid. Here, I am mostly referring to burst and vertical pop. Cunningham is not going to jump out of the gym or blow by his opponents on a regular basis. He is an average athlete, but the difference between average and great is definitely noticeable. Besides these clips where we can see how Cunningham does not always get the step on his defender, it is also worth pointing out that Cunningham had just 7 dunks all year long, which is a little below what you would expect from a 6'8" number 1 pick. This against Baylor is a good example. Their big gets switched onto Cunningham, but he cannot just explode against him and get to the rim. Instead, he takes and misses a tough floater. Or against Texas, Kai Jones switches onto Cunningham. He is able to drive, but never looks fully at ease and ends up missing the layup. Again here, Texas has no worries about letting Jones guard Cunningham. The difference is that unlike Cunningham, Jones is a top-tier athlete and he ends up stuffing the drive. But while Cunningham's lack of natural burst is definitely his biggest long-term improvement area, I have to admit that I am not overly concerned. This is a question mark that will be on the back of my mind, but I think a lot of it once again goes back to team fit. The fact of the matter is that opposing defenses barely had to worry about Oklahoma State's other players. Opposing teams could just flatten out and overwhelm Cunningham on his way to the basket. They could live with someone else getting a shot, whereas I do not expect this to be the case in the NBA. When he has better teammates, opponents will not be able to focus solely on Cunningham. In turn, his average athleticism should not be as obvious. His finishing in the lane definitely needs to get better, but I think it is serviceable enough right now. In all fairness, Cunningham has more margin for error than most given his size and good handle, but even then he also has a decent in-between game that makes up for his deficiencies at the rim. I like that Cunningham has this floater in his toolbox. He puts his really soft touch to good use and does not have to worry about defenses converging on him since he is able to stop on a dime and just shoot over them. All of this is to say that Cunningham has enough reversals to offset his greatest improvement area. One thing he really likes to do is drive left, spin right, and then finish. Cunningham is great at this quick spin to his strong side. Once he goes, he can then get either into a shot right at the basket, draw a foul, or do both at once. This possession against Texas is a great example. Cunningham hits Greg Brown with the rapid spin move and then finishes through him with great patience. In terms of passing, Cunningham's season was a mixed bag. I was a little disappointed given the hype that Cunningham's creation for others received going into his freshman season at Oklahoma State. He was billed by some as a passer in the category of someone like Luka Doncic or Ben Simmons, who has the size of a wing and can pass like a point guard. That, however, was in practice, and the reality was different from that. Yet, like most things with Cunningham, everything goes back to context and team fit. The pieces around Cunningham just did not really exist to take full advantage of his good passing. Whenever he found his peers for wide open threes, they often left the clear assist on the table. Like I said earlier, only one of his teammates shot above 33% from 3, and it was on a tiny sample size. Overall, only Cunningham made more than 35 threes all season long for Oklahoma State, and he was single-handedly responsible for 1/3 of his team's three-point makes. That means that the important thing for me here is that Cunningham displayed the ability to generate open triples, even if it was not taken advantage of. The few times that his good reads were used is how I expect Cunningham's passing to look like in the NBA. Here, he attracts the double and finds the open 3. Or against Arkansas, he draws so much attention out of the screen that the entire weak side is totally unattended to. Cunningham then hits the shooter with the accurate one-handed pass. In the pick and roll, I thought Cunningham made the most out of what he had. That is, he never really got to play with bigs who can cause a lot of damage in this play type. Matthew Alexander Moncrief is undersized at 6'7", while 6'9" Caleb Boone is also not really the type of big that can play above the rim or roll hard to the basket. Still, Cunningham showed off good timing and accuracy once he attracted the other team's attention. At 6'8", the great news is that he can easily see over defenses and then find his target. I am intrigued to see Cunningham play in the pick and roll in the NBA, since any team he goes to will be a considerable upgrade on centers or the lack thereof that he had at Oklahoma State. This pass for Boone against Texas Tech is a good example of what Cunningham should be able to do. Outside of ball screens, Cunningham also had some really nice flashes. Again, they were not always taken advantage of, but he definitely has the intelligence to react quickly to the defense and then find the open man. I expect that we will only see more of this as the spacing around him improves, and right now the bar for that is very low. I expect and hope that Cunningham's passing will really come alive when he is surrounded by NBA caliber players. Once that happens, then his gravity as a shooter should really pay off in terms of pure assists. This play against Baylor does a good job capturing Cunningham's season. His burst is not all the way there, but he is patient and hits the back cutter with a great pass. Unfortunately, it is to no avail. However, we must address the elephant in the room. While Cunningham showed intriguing potential as a playmaker, he also turned the ball over quite a bit. Cunningham averaged 4 turnovers per game and ended the season with 15 more turnovers than assists. That is not what you want to see from someone who you hope becomes a primary initiator down the line. Even though some of his problems can be attributed to Oklahoma State's personnel, like I just said, some of Cunningham's turnovers also came down to his own problems. In my opinion, he still has room to improve in terms of accuracy. Often he makes the right read, but the execution is just a little bit off. That was not held against him as much in a context like Oklahoma State, where they were entirely dependent on him. But it will be an issue with tighter spaces and margins in the NBA. Cunningham is a confident and loose player on the court, but he has to do a better job at taking care of the ball and cutting down on turnovers. There were times when Cunningham lost the ball completely unprovoked, and while he has the potential to play the one down the road, I think he still has to grow quite a bit. Defensively, Cunningham is a mixed bag right now. But starting with the good, the fact is that he stands to have more upside on this end of the floor than many prospects. That solely comes down to the fact that he is 6'8" and his mobility at that size. When he is locked in, Cunningham can really get down and slide with wings and some guards. His long arms and ability to flip his hips cause problems for opposing ball handlers. In time, he should be capable of consistently getting stops. Again, this is part of what makes Cunningham's ultimate outcome so intriguing. If you have a wing with the playmaking skills of a guard that can create his own shot and be versatile on defense, that is a perennial all-star in the making. Watch here as Cunningham denies the drive multiple times while shifting his hips and ultimately causes the Arkansas turnover. Off the ball, Cunningham has shown the most potential acting as a rim protector. Cunningham's height and length with a wingspan of 7'2" would honestly allow him to play in the front court. At Oklahoma State, he saw plenty of minutes at the 4, for example. While he will be a ball handler in the NBA, I expect that this part of Cunningham's game should translate to some extent. He has the timing and know-how to deter opponents at the rim. Here against Kansas, it's the final seconds of the game. The score is tied and Cunningham comes up with a huge two-handed block that eventually leads to the Oklahoma State and one. However, Cunningham was certainly not dialed in a lot of the time on this end of the floor. Part of it is because he had such an offensive burden to carry. However, you want Cunningham to do more in terms of individual containment and not be so easy to get by. His defensive effort wavered possession by possession, and Cunningham was guilty of taking time off on this side of the basketball. He was not resistant at all, and a lot of the time, opponents barely had to work to beat him. Am I worried about this? Yes and no. On one hand, I obviously want better effort from someone who has the tools to be a good defender. But on the flip side, he was Oklahoma State's entire offensive system, and effort does not always predict outcome when it comes to defense. For instance, Ben Simmons was a lousy NCAA defender and is now my front runner for Defensive Player of the Year. At times, Cunningham also left a lot to be desired off the ball. He has potential as a rim protector like I mentioned earlier, but in order to fulfill that upside, he needs to keep working on his rotations and timing. Sometimes he was either late or caught ball watching. That meant that instead of getting a block or a stop, Cunningham picked up a foul instead. Here against Texas, Cunningham should sink to stop the big, but he fails to do so properly and gives up the bucket. Against Baylor, Cunningham does not time the switch properly off the inbound, and Jared Butler makes a corner three. Finally, this lack of recognition manifested itself on the defensive glass. Cunningham has the means to be a good rebounder, but he left me wanting more during his only year at Oklahoma State. At times, he missed his box out, failed to put a body on a man, and let the opposing team get the rebound. I am optimistic about Cunningham's long-term defensive future given his flashes and physical tools. But if we are being objective, he showed as much bad as he did good on this end of the floor at Oklahoma State. As I've been saying, I expect CADE Cunningham to go number 1 overall in the 2021 NBA draft. But how good of a prospect is he? Is he generational? Is he very good? Is he normal? Well, I think he's somewhere in between generational and very good, but I am hesitant to call him the former, simply because I don't think that it is as clear-cut as some people are making it out to be. Now, CADE Cunningham is really good. He can create his own shot at will. His shot making at Oklahoma State was really impressive, and I do think it's legit. I buy into it. I think that his playmaking was fairly good, although he does have the turnover issue, and in an NBA setting, his passing should really come to life. He has some flaws to work out in terms of accuracy, and I definitely want to see him cut down on the avoidable turnovers. However, I think he will get there. And in terms of athleticism, which is my other main concern, well, like I said in the video, it's something that will be in the back of my mind, but I think he has enough counters to sort of offset that flaw. But despite all of that, I do think that CADE Cunningham does not belong in a category by himself. That is, he can perfectly be accompanied by Evan Mobley, and in my opinion, even though it might be unpopular or it might not be something that a lot of people are saying, I think Jalen Green deserves to be there as well. So will CADE Cunningham be a multi-time All-Star? Most likely. Is he a franchise-changing talent? Again, most likely. Is he the number 1 pick? I will say yes right now for sure. However, I do think that there is somewhat of a misconception around him because he is not Luka Doncic and he is not Ben Simmons. If I had to compare him with an NBA player, honestly, I would probably go Jason Tatum right now, but with better passing and worse defense. As always, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, make sure to leave a comment telling me what you think of CADE, and if you enjoyed the video, if you enjoyed the channel, make sure to subscribe. Take care, and I'll see you guys next time.